Alrighty, welcome in everyone. We're here at our alert desk with Lisa Adams, the First Lady of Erie News Now, as we get you set here on Election Day. And Lisa, you're covering the mayoral race here in the city of Erie, but there's perhaps nobody better to discuss basically every race here with. So let's start though with that mayoral race. No one running on the Republican side, but three candidates on the Democratic side.
Yeah, so different from 4 years ago when Joe Schember had to run among a field of 7 Democrats to win his party's nomination, and there were Republican candidates as well. And then he had a strong race against John Persinger in the fall, but he emerged. So this year there are 3 Democrats running, as you mentioned. So the mayor is facing a challenge from Tom Spakle and from Sidney Zimmerman, but nobody's running on the Republican side. So there is some effort going on to try to get write-ins on the Republican side, because if, say, Joe Schember could win enough votes in a write-in on the Republican side, then he wouldn't really have opposition in the fall.
So that's certainly something to look at there. Now, you've covered this race here for a handful of days, and it's something you followed, basically from the get-go. What's your feel here? Is there enough opposition to Mayor Schember, even though he's an incumbent facing challenges in his own party? What are our possibilities of an upset tonight?
Well, the headwinds would favor him just because he is an incumbent, and he was elected by a strong majority the first time around. But what a year, what a term it's been for him, because he's had to face cancer personally, had to deal with the pandemic where he shut City Hall down, and there's been some criticism in the campaign of should City Hall have been shut down so long. But also, as you remember well, there was the George Floyd-related protest here that turned violent, and there was some criticism about whether the mayor handled that well, responded to that well. So that's an interesting question. Also, a big thing that went on during his term was this decision whether or not to do this long-term lease with the Water Authority. And that had been kicked down the road from the previous administration. Some county or some city council members saying they just weren't ready to make a decision about that yet. So the decision made, and one of the candidates running, Tom Spakle, thinks it wasn't the right decision, although the mayor is very proud of the fact that it means he won't have to raise property taxes, so he says, for the next 5 years, and that he's started a cycle of longer-term budgeting, taken a long-term enough view, and he thinks that a lot of revenue was left on the table by negotiating that long-term lease. So Sidney Zimmerman, an interesting candidate, and this was a very interesting thing, too. Parties don't always endorse in a primary, but the Democrats did put together a committee. They had a forum where they heard from all these candidates, and in the end, Mayor Schember was just one vote shy on a couple of cycles through to get enough votes to be endorsed by his own party. So that certainly didn't seem like it was voting very well, but he, again, he was one vote short there of getting his party's endorsement in the primary. Now, Sidney Zimmerman, she works for Erie United, which she can't really do while she's running, so she's working for Pennsylvania United. But she is just a candidate who's saying, look, I know this is a long shot. This is the first time I've run for anything at all. I'm 28 years old. But she thinks that a lot of times when input is taken from the community on issues, say, for example, the Bayfront Parkway issue, was there enough of a study? Was there an environmental impact study? By the time that it gets to the public input stage, she thinks decisions have already been made, and she's frustrated by that, which is interesting because, Mayor Schember said, I'm going to go around the city and I'm going to have brown bag lunches and I'm going to listen to absolutely everybody, but she's a candidate who still thinks, maybe there was listening, but not enough action based on the listening. So it is an interesting three-way race, and the mayor himself said, I'm happy that I have challengers because it makes me work harder to get my message out to get reelected.
Who knows what we'll see tonight? Certainly that's one of the biggest races on the ballot. And Lisa, how much did the pandemic kind of flip this race on its head? Is it fair to say that Mayor Schember was probably moving pretty steadily toward reelection had we not had the pandemic and all the change that comes with it?
Yeah, I think that was a setback. I think, too, he did have some health issues, although he navigated that well. But he was working from home. His staff was working from home. City Hall not open. And so some people were, critical of that. That's been, of course, the topic of the of the year or the 18 months in Pennsylvania.
Right.
You know, were we too open? Were we too closed? What was the right thing? So I think talk to 10 people and you might get 10 different opinions on how that was handled.
So we'll look at all of that race. Certainly we know that it's going to be one of those three candidates emerging with the Democratic Party nod at some point. Might not be tonight because of mail-in ballots.
Yep, and that's a tricky thing too. I mean, I don't think we'll have the volume of mail-in ballots by any stretch that we saw in the general election because there was so many fireworks over the Biden-Trump race. And of course, a lot of people were afraid to go out to their polling place and vote. So a lot more people, I might be a good example. You know, I chose to vote mail-in the primary last year. I chose to take my ballot and turn it in by November and vote in person. And today, I took myself off the list for mail-in because I don't know, I'm old school. I like to go to my polling place and know that I voted that day. So
we've got that race. We also have a race for county executive. And you were at a debate hosted by a couple of juniors at Cathedral Prep for the Democratic candidates. We've got a handful of them running for this seat as well. Another hugely important seat in county government, especially because of all the money coming in from federal aid.
Yeah, this is a really interesting race. Of course, County Executive Kathy Dahl-Kemper deciding not to run for re-election, so quite a field of candidates here. 2 Republicans, 4 Democrats, and really all over the board. It seemed like it was Carl Anderson's race to lose because he really has the name recognition from being on county council and also really being the chair of the election committee last year during all. I mean, we must have been interviewing him every day of the week over the drop box and the counting issues and so on. So he certainly does have the name recognition, but some investigations, some looking into his some financial issues he had in his background got some attention. That at one point in time he had filed for bankruptcy, but then it came out that 2 other candidates at one point in time had filed for bankruptcy. So I think the question will be for people who were leaning toward Carl Anderson. Did he answer those questions well enough? Did he handle himself in saying, look, I've alluded to this in my campaigns in the past. I've said I know what it feels like to lose everything. Kind of explained how that went down and, responded to it. We all know in the media the worst thing you can do is lose control of your own story. So if there are any allegations or questions about anything, it's good when a candidate can step forward and answer those things, and certainly he did.
And on the Republican side, a couple of candidates there. We've got Bretton Davis and Sean Roblewski running on the Republican side. This is one that especially because of the pandemic, because of shutdowns and questions about should we be open, should we be closed. That race seems like one that come November could be incredibly close.
Yeah, kind of interesting. Brenton Davis has run for office a number of times, so people will be familiar with his name on the ticket. I really think the question is, because of the pandemic, as you mentioned earlier, what are people thinking? Are they paying close attention to local races? If there's not a lot of television advertising, do they really know who these people are and what they stand for? And will they go to the polls and vote today? So I think it will be interesting to see at the end of the night when the polls close at 8 o'clock tonight if there's a big turnout and how that will go down.
We'll have to wait and see. We'll have more from Lisa coming up tonight, including talking about a judge's race that you put on our radar a few days ago, and we've been talking about. So nobody better to talk about that with than Lisa, but you've got stuff coming up here throughout the evening. So we'll spring her for that as she gets ready for Erie News Now at 5. But nobody better in the business. We'll switch to a look outside on a gorgeous day here in downtown Erie and get ready with another welcome face back here at the Alert Desk as we roll along on our live coverage. We're live till 9:30 tonight here on Facebook Live. We'll take you up until the polls close and then bring you results as those start to trickle in, so make sure to stay with us as we cruise along and bring you everything you need to know on this primary day. A year after presidential elections, usually we see turnout a little bit lower in years like this. Only time will tell, but certainly from reports we've had so far at voting places, at polling places, numbers have been down a little bit. So we'll wait and see. That's kind of the story of the night so far, just because we are so early into the evening. But we do have some good news right now, and that is that the man is back. Paul Wagner joins us now. he's been on special assignment. We'll put it that way, right?
Retirement. That's
yes.
my assignment.
So Paul is back with us, though, for the evening and getting us set with all things municipal elections. So, we talked about turnout generally being down. You've experienced a whole lot of these in your time as a reporter. Just how much does that tend to dip from a presidential year and then the next year when it's just local races?
It always dips, and it always dips a lot. I think it'll be interesting to see, because we had so much intensity on the presidential race locally here with Trump and Biden and Joe Biden and Mike Pence, Karen Pence, all here, and dueling campaign headquarters in Union City, on both sides of the street. So much intensity, and now that the weather's nice, people are moving away from COVID, they want to go out and have a barbecue. I just don't see the intensity and the excitement, and that happens often after an intense, probably even more so this year, an intense presidential election going to a municipal election where people have kind of moved on and doing other things.
And I think we've seen even the ripple effects of that presidential election in other ways in terms of candidates kind of staking themselves toward those, local candidates staking themselves toward those political candidates on the national stage, where throwing yourself behind Donald Trump or as someone who supports President Biden could make a huge difference in a local race, not something you would necessarily think of.
Yeah, there's coattails, that's for sure.
Yes.
And of course, we had Erie County swinging from blue to red in 2016, then from red to blue in 2020. But still, if you look at it, really, most of the Democratic votes, the key strength is in the city of Erie. The Republican strength is south of Interstate 90. And I think you're going to see that again tonight, as you saw in the presidential election and as we typically see in these municipal elections as well.
How much of a difference do mail-in ballots make? Do you think that is something that really swings in favor of either party? Generally, we see mail-in ballots, more Democrats use mail-in ballots, but do you think that increases voter turnout among Democrats in, let's say, a municipal election like this one?
I think it will, and I think it really has changed the dynamic, the timing for the candidates, because a lot of these races, as I said, the municipal races, the candidates know that people aren't really paying attention to the last couple weeks, so they marshal all their resources for advertising, for phone banking, for donations into that last 2 weeks. But if you do that now, you're making a big mistake, because the ballots for the mail-in ballots are mailed out 3 or 4 or 5 weeks in advance. So those people, like myself, my wife, have already voted. So you could have a great advertising 3 days before the election, it doesn't matter. So I think it really has changed the timing. These candidates have to get out there earlier to raise money, to go door to door, to advertise, to get their word out.
How much harder is that when you're voting by mail to learn about a local candidate, again, because you don't see that push until a lot of people have already sent their ballot back in? Did you have to do more homework on your end than you ordinarily might?
It's out there. It's on the internet. It's here at Erie News Now, and newspapers are giving the information. But you're right, it is hard, and there's got to be a letdown after that Trump-Biden. It was so much excitement to get back into the political swing, especially as the weather's improving. But I think the information is out there if people want to look for it.
We've got a lot of races up and down the ballot, some that are going to draw a lot of eyeballs, others that people are going to vote for somebody they've never heard of. But as you look through all of this, what are the ones that jump out to you as the ones that, for one reason or another, are really the most interesting, even if not always the big ones at the top of the ticket?
Well, I think the two races and Lisa talked a little bit about this as far as Joe Schemmer having two candidates. That's really unusual. I mean, in a mayoral race for two Democrats to challenge an incumbent who there hasn't been any major scandal or anything.
No.
Maybe people aren't happy with the way he handled COVID or something, but no major scandals. And in the past, pretty much Joe Sinnott, Joyce Savacchio would just skate to victory because nobody would challenge him. They were all Democrats. So that has surprised me that two persons, including a school board member, are challenging someone from their own party. The other race I think to watch is in Mill Creek. Kim Clear, a county councilwoman, and running against John Morgan, who's an incumbent. That's kind of unusual too. You have an incumbent Mill Creek supervisor who's been there for 6 years, who is going to have a couple challenges, whoever wins the race. But for a county councilwoman to challenge him in the same party is a little bit unusual. I think that'll be a fascinating one to watch too.
That's definitely one to keep an eye on, and that one's been a little tense kind of from the get-go.
Yes.
So we'll see what happens in that race. And yet, you'd mentioned Mayor Schember getting competition here. Is that because of specifically Mayor Schember, do you think, or is it because of changing demographics within the Democratic Party and within Erie County, that somebody who's more toward the right side of the political spectrum, but who's still a registered Democrat, would say, we want to move things more toward a fiscally conservative. Does that play into this at all? Somebody who leans just a different way within the party?
I think that's part of it. I definitely think that's part of it, because I don't think the party certainly doesn't want a divided party. They want a unified party around the mayor of Erie. So I think there's definitely some truth to that.
And again, Erie hasn't had a Republican mayor in how long? And so if you want to be mayor of Erie,
you're a Democrat.
You're going to run as a Democrat regardless of where you stand on the political spectrum. So something to look at there as well. So Paul's got stuff coming up in Erie News Now at 5 as well, so we're going to let him get out of here and get ready for that. But that alone is reason to tune in and make sure to watch Erie News Now at 5, because the man is back. We're going to have a lot more with him coming up throughout the night here on our alert desk as we take you to our Skyview cam here and let Paul get up and get out of here. But Paul, thanks so much for being back. Meanwhile, we cruise along here on the alert desk. The fun just continues as we've got another 4.5 hours to go live here at our alert desk, bringing you up-to-the-moment coverage. Again, polls close at 8 o'clock tonight, so if you haven't voted yet, this is your opportunity to do so. Go to your polling place, cast your ballot. As long as you're a registered voter, you're good to go. So make sure to do that. Again, it's local races, which people sometimes overlook. After all, it's not a presidential race, but bear in mind, we've got everything from state Supreme Court, Superior Court, and Commonwealth Court, all the way down to the county executive, county council members, the county clerk of records, the sheriff, the mayor here in the city of Erie. We've got city council members here in Erie. You'll have borough council members as you've moved further on throughout Erie County, school board members as well. So there's a lot to keep on, keep your attention as you head to the polls today. So make sure to head out there. These are the people who in a lot of ways are going to have the biggest effects on your day-to-day life. It's not the people you send to Washington. It's the people you send to City Hall, to the county courthouse, or to the township building just down the road. So make sure to tune in to Erie News Now at 5 as we get you set with live election coverage throughout the evening. Erie News Now at 5, 5:30, and 6. We'll have that right here from the alert desk as well. So from time to time, you'll see me kind of have to stop what I'm doing here and talk to Mike and Eva as they get us set with live coverage. Eva's down at the courthouse today. Mike anchors our shows from here. Kristen Allen is in Warren. Jamison Hicksonbaugh is in Crawford County covering the Meadville mayoral race. Lisa Adams is covering the Erie mayoral race. So we have people everywhere. Our Elspeth Meisner is looking at Mill Creek, that race that Paul just mentioned, and talking about what we might see coming out of there in that supervisor's race, especially on the Democratic side, to see Kim Clear challenging an incumbent. What might come of all of that? So there's a lot to break down, a lot to kind of digest, if you will, as we cruise along here on a primary day. It is a Tuesday in May, and that means it's time to start giving some people some party nods. Again, we're not electing anybody tonight. Winning these races this evening doesn't mean that all of a sudden you hold a seat in office, although in a lot of cases doing so more or less assures that you will. After all, if Mayor Schember were to win his party's nod today, there's not any Republicans running. He's going to cruise to victory in November. So, just depends. A lot on the line tonight as we figure out who will be the party nominee in a lot of races, and in other races where one party already has a nominee locked up, we'll see who the challenger will be. So a lot to learn this evening. Let's take you again outside for just a moment as we look over downtown Erie on a gorgeous day. That's something also to consider, just how much of an effect the weather actually has on voter turnout, because frankly there haven't been a whole lot of people at the polls today. Polling places largely empty throughout our region, and you wonder if it's because people just would rather be outside and they forget it's primary day, one of those days that's easy to overlook. Let us know what your questions are as we move along during our Facebook Live presentation here. I'm pulling that up as we speak, and I'll try to answer any questions that you have. So let me know what you want to know about, what you'd like to hear us talk about, because there's a lot to break down, and certainly we have lots of time to do it. So let's have a conversation here this evening and bring you up to speed on all of your different races. This was glitching on the boards. Yep. Did you have him reset it? Doug said he was going to reset it because he came and closed stuff out. I need the mayor's It's down just a hair. Not even that far.
Do you see it? Do you know where
It's coming. Yeah, right there it is. But then when you click go to air, that pops up, and I have no clue what it means.
Cool. We gotta kill it.
Alrighty, welcome back as we cruise through here on Facebook Live. We'll be live in just a moment on air as well. Our Mike Ruzzi is on the air, handling our coverage on Erie News Now, so make sure to tune in for that if that strikes your fancy. Certainly that is our best election coverage, as we've got people all over the region bringing you up to speed on everything you need to know, including people walking out of precincts with ballots, because it wouldn't be election day if everything went smoothly, right? So here's what we know. We've had a couple of polling places where people have walked out with their ballots. One here in Erie, one in Girard, a total of about 33 people who left with ballots instead of putting them through a scanner. They don't count if you don't scan them, so that is a big, big problem. Mike, good evening. There is, frankly, a lot standing out tonight. You just mentioned people walking out of polling places with ballots. Election day always throws a few tweaks your way, and we're seeing that in some of these races, too. There's a few big ones to keep your eye on, and, of course, we'll break those down for you more throughout the evening. But in talking with our Paul Wagner and our Lisa Adams, who were back here at our alert desk offering some insight on Facebook, the ones that they're really keeping an eye on, that mayoral race here in Erie, of course, to see an incumbent facing challengers, and Mayor Schember has two. That's a big one to keep an eye on. The county executive race, both on the Democratic and the Republican side, a lot to look at there, because that's somebody who's going to go into a position where they have to figure out how Erie County is going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars that it gets in federal aid. So the next person we put in that position is going to steer the county not just for a 4-year term, but really set it up for 10, maybe 20 years down the road. The sheriff's race, Micah, as you know, also getting a lot of attention because of the nature of that campaign, one that has gotten kind of bitter here, even though we're only in primary season. And then another one to keep an eye on out in Mill Creek, a supervisor's race where an incumbent faces a challenge. We'll have a lot more coverage on all of these throughout the night on Erie News Now. And of course, we're covering them from the alert desk. We're bringing all the experts in from 4:30 all the way till 9:30. We have every last bit of information you want to hear, and we'll bring it to you live. For now, though, at the alert desk, Ethan Kibbe, Erie News Now. It keeps kicking this accessory off, so I can't hear if I got cut or... Elizabeth, could I steal your little dangle?
We're on right after weather.
Weather. Yep, I'll be there.
I have a new one. You think it's that one or just?
Yeah, worth a shot. This was Scott's.
Okay.
So.
Want to try that? Go ahead, give that a shot.
If she goes out anywhere, then she'll need her one, so. All right, we're going to go with this for now. Alrighty, everybody. Welcome on back. This is how it works here when you're doing live TV and trying to do all of this. We have, that's the call to the bullpen, right, while I get new equipment. So that's what we're dealing with this evening. There's just so much going on. That's how a newsroom works, and that's kind of the point of the alert desk, is to be able to bring you back in behind the scenes and show you how all of this works. When you see it on TV, it looks so smooth. Believe me, back here, we're sweating. Everybody kind of scrambles, and then we make it look perfect when it hits on air for you. That's always the goal anyway. And certainly we hope that we're doing that tonight. Our Eva Mastromadio right now is down at the Erie County Courthouse, and she's talking with Erie County Clerk Doug Smith. He's filling her in on what we're seeing so far, including that story of people walking away with ballots. Just an odd story, to say the least, but listen, this is part of that new election process that we instituted a couple of years ago, right? There were concerns that voting machines could be hacked, and so we have the digital votes that are scanned through, and we also have a paper copy that falls down through after your ballot has been scanned. But if you walk out without your ballot, well, okay, you got a nice souvenir, but you don't have a vote. It didn't count. So that's really important. If you're one of the people who voted in Erie or Girard and took off with your ballot, bring it back, get it counted, make sure it votes, or make sure it counts rather, because in small municipal elections like this, every vote really does matter. You might not think that 33 votes are enough to really swing things, but that could be the difference between somebody getting a party nomination tonight or not. Also, eventually, we'll be able to pull up for you and show you all of the different races, but right now we're working on our software on that, so the second we can do it, we will. In the interim, let me just take you through some of the races we're following right now. We talked about this last night, but the race for Supreme Court here in Pennsylvania is a complicated one. Republicans have several people running for that seat, 3 different people running. Democrats don't, so that's not a case where you're going to see anyone on the ballot that you need to do anything other than fill a bubble in. But on the Republican side, you'll have options there. And there is concern over Judge Patricia McCullough. Right now, she's a Commonwealth Court judge, but her husband is actually in prison right now. He had power of attorney over an older lady, stole $50,000 from her, and gave $10,000 to the charity that his wife ran. Because welcome to Pennsylvania, right? Why not? So that's what happened there. He's in prison. She has escaped any sort of fallout. However, does that mean that she should be a judge or not? That's up to you, the voter, to decide. We're also looking at plenty of other things this evening, including county council races that will be hugely important because county council is going to determine where a lot of that money goes. Again, it's something we've talked about at length, but hundreds of millions of dollars are coming to our area. And Erie City Council and Erie County Council are going to be the ones who largely divvy up that money. So the people you put into office with your votes today and then in November are going to have a say over where all of that money goes. Again, today we're not electing anyone to office, but we're electing the party's nominees. And once those people secure the nominations, in a lot of cases, that's almost a lock to win in November. So that's why today is so important. It's easy to think that these are just municipal primaries, but in a lot of ways, you're giving people jobs today. Jobs today. So something to keep in mind as our coverage rolls on. Let's talk for a moment about the county council races. In the 4th District on the Democratic side, we've got 4 people running. Now, only one person can win that, but Angela McNair running for county council. Jim Winarski also running for county council. Kevin Pastuka also running, and Julia Calippo all running. 4 people running for one seat on the Democratic side. Tim Gostomski running unopposed on the Republican side. And county council in the 6th District, we've got 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans running. So you'll have options there. County council, though, in the 2nd District, Andre Horton actually the only person running for that seat, largely because he's a lock to win it. No Democrat is going to challenge Horton in that district because they're not going to beat him. Likewise, no Republican is going to win that district. So Andre Horton running unopposed in the 2nd District for county council. If you're watching us, let us know. What would you like to talk about here in our primary election coverage? What races matter most to you? We can talk about the sheriff's race as well. Brian Shank running on the Republican side. He's running unopposed, so he'll be on the ballot for sure tonight. Other people on the ballot, Chris Campanelli and Anthony Sanfilippo, also both running, and all 3 of them have faced in various ways concerns. Let's put it that way. There have been, I don't want to say scandals, but issues in all 3 of those campaigns, everything ranging from alleged misconduct with prisoners when Brian Shank was a prison guard, to Facebook posts from Campanelli and Sanfilippo that knocked their own party. Now, Campanelli got the party's endorsement, but Again, all three of them facing different issues that they've had to deal with and kind of navigate during this campaign season. On the city council side, there are, well, frankly, a ton of people running, but that's unsurprising because we're electing 4 Erie City Council members. Only Sean Lyons and Greg Brown are running on the Republican side, so those two will definitely move on, but we've got more than a handful. By my count, we've got 8 people running for city council on the Democratic side. A lot of candidates there. You choose 4, and away we go as we head on into elections this fall. I've got to step away for just a moment and get set for another quick hit with Paul Wagner on Erie News Now at 5. Make sure to tune in for that. And I'll resume our coverage right back here on Facebook Live as soon as I can. So I'm going to stop this for just one moment. We'll stop our